Have you ever paused with your hand on a door just to mentally rehearse what was about to happen on the other side? Have you ever spent more energy preparing for something than actually doing it? Have you ever left a conversation smiling, then immediately felt your energy disappear the second you were alone? For years, the world handed you a short list of words for that: anxious, awkward, shy, too sensitive, too intense, too much. But psychology is now saying something different. A lot of adults who spent their whole lives believing they were just nervous or bad at people were actually describing something else entirely. So today we're counting down 7 everyday habits that look completely normal, but are quietly recognized signs of autism in adults. Stay till number 1. It's the one almost nobody admits out loud because it feels too strange to say. Here's the part most people miss. Autism doesn't always look the way movies taught us it should. It isn't always a child who won't make eye contact or a genius who can't tie his shoes. There's a quieter profile. Psychologists sometimes call it high-masking autism. These are people who learned, through years of effort and watching everyone else, to hide their traits well enough to pass as normal. They hold jobs. They have friends. They look fine. And millions of them were never identified at all. They just grew up feeling fundamentally different, without a single word to explain why. One quick thing before we start. Recognizing yourself here is not a diagnosis. It's just a more accurate way to understand yourself. Let's count down. Number 7. You notice things other people don't even register. Most brains have a filter. The hum of the fluorescent light, the tag in the back of a shirt, the smell of a coworker's lunch, the buzz of a fridge. For most people, those sounds and sensations fade into the background within seconds. For you, they don't. Everyone else forgot the noise was there. You never got that option. That hum can stay at full volume in your head for hours, like someone turned the world's settings up and lost the remote. Psychology calls this a sensory processing difference. Your nervous system isn't broken, it just doesn't automatically decide what's worth ignoring. So you leave the loud restaurant after 20 minutes. You can't wear that one fabric. You eat the same safe meal for a week. Not picky, just wired louder. Number 6, you need to know the plan before you can relax, not in a cute, organized way, in a real way. Someone cancels dinner, the meeting gets moved, the route you've taken 100 times is suddenly closed. Everyone else adjusts and keeps going. Your brain has to stop and rebuild the map. For a lot of autistic adults, routine isn't a preference, it's infrastructure. When the plan is intact, your brain has fewer decisions to burn energy on. When it breaks, the whole system spikes. And it takes you a long time to come back down. From the outside, people read this as controlling, rigid, difficult to please. From the inside, it's the opposite of control. It's bracing, not controlling, bracing. Number 5, you rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. You plan how you'll say hi. You script your coffee order. You run the whole exchange in your head before you walk in. And afterward, you do it in reverse. It's 2 in the morning and your brain is replaying a slightly weird thing you said in 2019. Here's why. Many people read social cues more intuitively. The tone shift, the pause, the moment someone wants to wrap up. For you, a lot of that isn't automatic. You process it manually, one signal at a time. So you're not bad at conversations. You're doing live translation while everyone else just speaks the language. Not awkward. Translating. Let's pause for a second because we're halfway down the list. Notice what's happening right now. You're probably not learning new information. You're remembering yourself. That feeling, that quiet, wait, that's me, is worth paying attention to. Not because it labels you, because for the first time, the pattern has a shape. And if you're feeling relieved instead of surprised, that's information too. And remember, recognizing the pattern is not the same as diagnosing it. Just keep breathing and keep that thought. Number 4, you take language more literally than people mean it. Someone says drop by anytime, and you spend 10 real minutes trying to work out whether they mean anytime or whether there's a hidden rule you're supposed to know. People tell you they were being obvious, and you feel like everyone else got handed a rule book you never received. This is subtle because plenty of autistic adults read sarcasm just fine. The difference is the default. Your brain tends to start from the literal meaning and work outward, instead of landing on the hidden one instantly. A boss gives a vague instruction, you follow it exactly as said, and somehow it was wrong. those tiny misfires pile into a quiet ache, getting the rules slightly off again, without knowing why. Not slow, just literal, first. Number 3, you don't just like things, you move in. Most people visit a topic, you move in and unpack your whole life there. You open one video about trains, and 4 hours later you're reading engineering documents from 1987 and you forgot to eat. You don't just learn a subject, you accidentally build a second degree in it. Psychology has a name for this kind of attention: monotropism. Your focus flows deep into one channel instead of spreading thin across many. And when someone asks about it, you light up and hand them every fact you have. Because for you, sharing what fascinates you is how you say I like you. Data is a love language. People call it intense. It isn't arrogance. Not arrogant. Overflowing. Number 2, you perform normal, and it quietly drains everything out of you. This is the reason so many adults, especially women and people diagnosed late, go their whole lives unrecognized. Psychologists call it masking. It's forcing eye contact that feels invasive, copying other people's expressions, rehearsing jokes, hiding your fidgeting, building a whole character that passes as typical while the real you runs underneath at full effort the entire time. And nobody sees the version of you that comes after, the silent one, the exhausted one, the one lying on the floor after a party everyone else found fun, staring at the ceiling with every social battery at 0. You can mask so well that no one suspects a thing. Then you wonder why you're so anxious, so burned out, so tired of a life that looks completely fine on paper. It's not the people that drain you. It's the performance, not fine, performing. And number 1, the one almost nobody admits out loud. Think about that thing you've done your whole life without ever really noticing. The foot pressing into the floor, the fingers rubbing together under the table, the jaws tightening, the tongue pushed against your teeth, the leg that bounces for an hour, the song lyrics looping in your head on repeat. The invisible movements nobody ever sees. That's stimming. Psychology calls it self-stimulatory behavior, and it has a real job. It regulates your nervous system. When you're anxious, it calms you. When you're overwhelmed, it gives you one thing you can control. When you're happy, it's joy that needs somewhere to go. When most people hear the word, they picture a child rocking or flapping, so they rule themselves out instantly. But if you were ever taught to sit still and look normal, your stims didn't disappear. They just went underground. Nobody trained it out of you. You learned to hide it. The need never left, not a quirk. Regulation. So go back to those 3 questions from the start. The moment you paused with your hand on a door. The energy you spent preparing for things most people seem to handle effortlessly. The conversations you left smiling, only to feel your energy disappear the moment you were alone. Every habit on this list has at some point been called weird, difficult, or too much. But here's the reframe. Maybe you were never failing at being normal. Maybe you were just spending all your energy trying to look normal. And the goal here was never to decide whether you're autistic. It's to understand yourself more accurately, because people spend years trying to fix traits that were never defects. So tell me in the comments, which of these 7 hit the hardest? Which one made you go, that's me? And if going deep on the psychology behind your own mind is what you're here for, subscribe, because there's more coming. One last thing, and it matters. This video is informational and educational, not a medical diagnosis. If this resonated deeply, talk to a qualified mental health professional. Don't self-diagnose. Inform yourself.